You know, oh, it just popped. Wow. You know what? It's a solid sounding engine. In this video, we're gonna be checking out this BMW 650 Ci. It's a very beautiful and controversial car, so let's go and jump right into this. My name is Nikolai. I like to film and build cool cars. If you're new here, consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon so you stay up to date. We're gonna learn a whole lot about cars and see some pretty cool stuff. Let's jump into the video. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. So this time we're checking out this 2007 BMW 650 Ci. Now, before we go ahead and jump into the video, I want to give a huge thank you to Moss Curtain Motors here in Savannah, Georgia for providing this vehicle and allowing this review to happen. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. So the 650 Ci. I'm going to be talking a lot about the 5 Series in this video as well because Chris Bangle, you know, the main person responsible for these designs with these cars of this era for BMW. It's a very controversial car. It looks very out there. It looks very futuristic. And, you know, some people either love it or hate it. I don't see too many in-betweens. You know, me, I definitely think the front end of this car is interesting to say. And then the rear, I think, is beautiful. I love the way the taillights look on this car. I love the silhouette, the really big rear end, the wide hips. I think it looks really good. And it's a very timeless design, in my opinion. I think over time, this car hasn't really aged too much. It almost looks like it could be maybe a 5-year-old car and not, you know, close to a 15-year-old car. So it's a very timeless design. And, you know, let's talk about BMW in this kind of time frame. So it's a very interesting time because Chris Bangle era of BMW was a very futuristic design. And not only that, what BMW was doing with their engines was also very unique to say. So they were throwing a 4.8 liter V8 naturally aspirated engine into this car, making 360 horsepower and 360 pound-feet of torque, a very linear horsepower number and very linear torque curve. So, you know, with it being a naturally aspirated V8, it's a very linear power band, just having 360 horsepower, 360 torque. That sounds amazing. And that's very interesting because this thing's German, and at the time, other manufacturers, not even just German manufacturers, just in general, all other car manufacturers, were starting to head into what we are at now, where we have 4-cylinder turbo engines and just smaller displacement engines. And basically BMW at the time was like, no, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna make this thing look futuristic. We're gonna toss a big V8 into here. And if you look at cars like the M6, the M5 of this time, you know, supporting that V10 engine, BMW was basically like, nope, we're not gonna do turbos. We're just gonna do a huge V8 engine into here. I would say it's a little bit low on power for its displacement size, but you know, that's totally fine because if you look at muscle cars of this time frame, it is roughly in that horsepower and torque range. So, you know, if you compare it to different types of cars, it almost puts itself into its own class, which would be more of like a GT class. But even then, it still definitely has like the raw muscle car feeling that you get from it. You know, it's a very raw, you know, like it's a naturally aspirated engine. Obviously, from something like that, you're just gonna get raw sounds. It's linear. This is definitely my style of car where it's very smooth, it's very fun, it's very fast. It's maybe not the best at one thing in particular, but it's good at a lot of things, and that's just what really BMW nailed with this car. So let's go ahead and stop it here, put it into sport mode, and then we can go ahead and launch this thing. So let's see how it feels. So it spun a little bit there, and this thing definitely, it'll spin if you want it to, but you know, I think it's definitely a fun car just launching it there. It has the power that you want to have fun with it. Granted, it's not like, ooh, like pushing you back in your seat crazy, but it's really nice power to get up to speed, but also have fun with it. So I definitely enjoyed this power level. And I think the main thing here is when you have 360 horsepower, 360 torque, the exact same number for torque and horsepower, it's gonna feel very linear. You know, some cars have too much torque compared to, well, I guess there's no such thing as too much torque, but they have so much torque compared to their horsepower that it just feels like, whoa, like this is crazy, and then it loses it in the top end. But, you know, on the flip side, some cars have a lot of horsepower but no torque, so you give it gas and it's like, okay, where are we going? This thing definitely has both, and even, you know, in sport mode, floor it. Yeah, that thing sounds good. It accelerates hard. I mean, there's not much to complain about here. Yes, I know a lot of people would say, oh, well, this car isn't the most reliable, but put that aside, you know, get a well-maintained example, and this thing is definitely going to be fun. It just kind of goes to show how BMW really does their own thing, and they do what they think is best. I do think, you know, with the mods that this car has, it definitely does stand out more. Now, the blue paint on here, this is actually a full respray, and then the wheels on here as well. It's a very controversial design, but me personally, I do enjoy it. You know, I think it's definitely a unique car. It has its own quirks and features, so it's a very interesting car just looking at it. I mean, if we look at the front end here, like these headlights here, you've never seen a car like this. I mean, this type of design is its own design. Typically, you see more of like a rounded headlight or more squared off rectangle. These are just a very interesting, you know, I mean, they got like a little cut right here to kind of make an aggressive sharp in there. Very interesting. You also have like your little kidney grills with the BMW. Very timeless, you know, everyone loves those because now the newer BMWs have like those really large grills that we don't really like. And then moving along, you know, just a wide open hood, very Grand Tourer-esque, because this car is a GT car. You know, it's a large coupe. This thing weighs 3,800 pounds, which it's kind of weird because you would think a coupe would be lightweight, but then at the same time, you look at how big this car is, especially in person, and you're like, well, actually 3,800 pounds isn't too much for how big this thing is. So with it being a coupe, you would think it would feel kind of small, but with it being more of a Grand Tourer style coupe, it really has a lot of mass to it, I guess you could say. There's just a lot going on here. So, you know, with it being a convertible, it definitely feels a lot more open. I mean, it's so awesome being able to look up and seeing the sky, you know. And maybe I'm just a little bit biased that it's convertible because this is my first convertible that I've ever really, you know, spent a lot of time in. So maybe I'm just overly excited about it, but regardless, it's really fun because I love these types of cars where it's just all about fun and enjoyment. You know, it's not the fastest car out there. It's definitely not the best cornering car out there, but is it fun? Oh yeah, I think if you're going for like a nice cruiser, you know, just through the roads, through the mountains, it's a really good car for that. And just even here, like you can hear, like there's not a lot of wind noise with the windows, you know, or the roof open, which is nice. And just like suspension wise, it's a very smooth riding car. You know, obviously it's a BMW, it's gonna be smooth. There's no need to, you know, feel as if just because it's a convertible or it's a sporty car that it's not gonna be comfortable. It's definitely nice that this car is as comfortable as it is. And granted, it is on these probably 21 inch wheels, but they still definitely do ride smooth enough. I'm sure stock size wheels would be a lot smoother on here, but you know, it's totally fine. The suspension still does a really good job at everything. And just here riding it, like I just really like this car. You know, it's a BMW at the end of the day, but it is still a coupe with a convertible, so you know it's gonna be fun for that. You know, it's and also being the convertible, it's gonna weigh more. But you know, moving along to the side of the car, the silhouette here is very interesting because this, especially being the convertible, you really be able to see how large these hips are. You know, it's all controversial. You know, which one do you like more, the convertible or the car top? I think the convertible is cool for a car like this because if you want a Grand Tourer, you know, a car that you can take across the country literally and do it comfortably, this thing will do it. You know, reliability wise, this is BMW's, I would say, least reliable era. So this generation of BMW is probably the most unreliable BMW time. Also the M cars, which had much different engines. They're definitely not BMW's most reliable engines, and these cars did support a lot of problems, and I think that really is what brings them down, is just how unreliable they are. So it's just a simple fact that if these cars were reliable, I think so many more people would be buying them, because you got to think, the main thing that is keeping people from buying cars like this, like especially now that you would have to buy it used and it's, you know, 2007, roughly like 2010 time, is you have to buy it used. And these things, even after like 75,000 miles, will start to have some issues that are just almost like ticking time bombs. Now you can, you know, do supporting mods that will fix this. So, you know, like these things have a coolant leak sometimes, and there are things you can do to fix that, but it's just kind of like you have to do this and this and this and this, and now the engine's reliable. So in stock form, these things definitely need some work to get them reliable, but if we kind of just push that aside and just look at the numbers on paper and then look at what this car is, it's a very fun to drive car. It's a very well handling car. You know, definitely it's not like a 911 as far as its handling, but for what it is, you know, a very big and heavy Grand Tourer coupe convertible, I think it gives you all the fun you need. It gives you all the power you need, which I can actually throw an exhaust clip in here right now. So yeah, that's a very loud, raw sounding car. It's almost like a muscle car that you would see from like American, like, you know, like a Ford Mustang GT, a Dodge Challenger. It has that very raw American muscle feeling, but it's a German car. So it's very interesting how, you know, they threw a 4.8 liter V8 in this car, just gave it a humongous engine, and it's a very big car. So, you know, it supports having a big engine. I think it's cool that they didn't toss like some weak engine into here that's like a 4-cylinder turbo or even just a 6-cylinder. Now the diesel version of this car does have the 6-cylinder, which makes a lot less power. I guess it still has torque, but I think if you're gonna get this car, you definitely have to opt for the V8. Really just definitely learn to appreciate cars like this because we don't get them anymore. And yeah, we do still get V8 engines, but nowadays to get a V8 engine into something like this is quite rare. You know, a lot of companies are putting in turbo 4s into their cars, which that's just boring. We want something more fun. We want to be able to hear that exhaust note, which, you know, a lot of us love. And, you know, as we get into electric cars, we're going to start losing that. So I definitely like that this car is in that class of Grand Tourer where it's a big boat. You know, like, let's be honest, this thing, it weighs a lot. It feels like you can feel the weight. It's a boat, but at the end of the day, if you're just here to have fun, it doesn't get in the way too much just because of how well this car is balanced. You know, the suspension, the steering, you know, the acceleration, everything really works, and it doesn't feel like any of them are sluggish. Granted, like I said, you know, it's not like one of them's the best at anything, but it still does the job, and it does it fairly well. The rear end is definitely my favorite part of this car because if we look at the Chris Bangle era of BMW at this time, they're very controversial, but, you know, overall, I just love the way the BMW looks here in the back. I think the wide hips with a very rounded off rear end looks very good, and it gives the car a very timeless appearance. You know, these taillights are just a cool design. You know, there's a lot of shapes that you don't see on other typical cars, and I think that's what really makes this car stand out. A lot of people really hate on it, but me personally, I think this rear end is beautiful, especially if you look at like the 5 Series, like the M cars. I love those rear ends. And, you know, this car does have an aftermarket exhaust, so you can see a little bit different. It does sound very good, especially being a V8. So I just overall think the rear end of this car looks great, and then being the convertible, obviously it looks slightly different than like the hardtop, but overall it's just a very good looking car. So there you have it. That's the 2007 BMW 650 Ci. It's a very fun, controversial, stylistic car. There's a lot of characteristics that you can describe this car as, but overall I just really enjoyed the car, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching the video. But for now, if you enjoyed watching the video and want to see many more videos just like this, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.